So pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law, Section 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's July 16, 2022 revised order extending remote participation by all members in any meeting of a public body. This meeting of the Great Barrington Finance Committee will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to listen to the meeting may do so in the following manner. Please see the instructions on the top of this agenda. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. Pursuant to Massachusetts General Law 7C30A, Section 20F, after notifying the chair of the public body, any person may make a video or audio recording of an open session of a meeting of a public body, or may transmit the meeting through any medium. At the beginning of the meeting, the chair shall inform other attendees of any such recordings. Any member of the public wishing to speak at the meeting must receive permission of the chair. And Anne, are you seeing anyone recording the meeting?
I do see someone here from the Berkshire Edge. Anybody else recording? Doesn't
Okay,
seem
so,
so.
all right, so we'll call the meeting to order with a roll call vote. Anne?
Here.
Elena?
Aye.
Madonna?
Aye.
And I'm Philip Orenstein, and I am here as well. Any committee member announcements or statements?
None.
Okay. All right, seeing none, we'll quickly move to the approval of the minutes for the meeting, our last meeting, the meeting of December 13th. Those minutes are in the packet. Do we have a motion?
I
So
make,
I make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Any comment? Seeing none, a roll call vote. Anne?
Aye.
Madonna?
Aye.
Elena?
Aye.
I approve it as well. Okay, we'll move to the town manager update. Mark Przenski is here. Mark, anything you'd like to update us on?
Yeah, just a very brief update on the fiscal 24 budget process. I just wanted to mention to you that we're deep into the budget process here at Town Hall behind the scenes. We're meeting with department heads on a regular basis and looking at department budgets line by line. In fact, I just left the meeting with Ally a few minutes ago. Collective bargaining sessions are wrapping up now. We're very close to signing MOAs with all three. So good news to report there. It looks like we won't have to build a contingency fund into fiscal 24. We'll be able to close these negotiation sessions and build it right into the budget this time around. We're at the point where we're making some difficult decisions like we do every year before we present the budget, but we're on track for presenting late next month, and you'll receive budget books prior. We'll try to give them to you as early as we possibly can, but just like prior years, you'll get a budget book from us and have some time to take a look before we make a presentation on the 28th. Anything you want to add, Ally?
No, I think you pretty much covered it. Thank you.
Yeah, that's all I have.
Question for you, Mark. The collective bargaining agreements, are there other towns involved in those, I presume, or is it just Great Barrington?
That's just Great Barrington. We have 3 unions: Public Works, our libraries, and our police department.
Okay, all right. So that's sort of bilateral.
Yeah.
Okay.
So once
And-
we,
Go ahead,
sorry, I
sir.
was just going to say, once we have the MOAs signed, my next step will be to take those MOAs to the select board in executive session for ratification, and then we will update the budget accordingly.
Okay, thank you. And the detailed schedule of the budget meetings where you've allocated each day a list of particular departments, that schedule is in the packet. So if board members are looking for that, it's right in there.
And
Okay, terrific. Thank you, Mark.
Mark, can I just ask
Thank
a
you.
quick question? This is just a procedural question. Are these going to be in-person meetings, online, or hybrid?
So I would leave that up to the chairs of the select board and finance committee. We're certainly capable of doing a hybrid format, just like we do with select board meetings, if that's something you'd like to do. And I'll leave that to the chairs to decide, though.
Okay. Okay, well, then we'll move on to the next agenda item, and that's a discussion with Buddy Atwood, Chairman, and William Brinker, member of the Prudential Committee of the Great Barrington Fire District Water Department. And first of all, thank you, gentlemen, for joining us tonight. I appreciate that you've volunteered your time for this discussion. The objective here is really to simply to continue the discussion you had with the select board back in November. Perhaps go into a little more detail on some aspects and shed a little more light in some of the details. To state the obvious, our only objective is just to continue the process of peeling the onion a bit on the challenges here and to improve water for all Great Barrington residents. I'm sorry, Ann, you're raising your hand?
Yeah, can I start with a question, or do you want to start?
Clearly, yes. I'd like to make it just a very brief
Sure.
sort of stage setting introduction here that I've put a lot of work into. So, and then I'll shut up. But
Okay, sorry, thought you might be able to. Okay.
no, that's okay. That's okay. One way of achieving the objective of better water quality for Houstonic Waterworks customers is improvements to their filtration system. And that process is ongoing, albeit slow, and we're really not going to be addressing that here. The other potential avenue is a potential sale of Houstonic Waterworks to some entity that has perhaps more technical and financial resources to provide better water quality. And as indicated by Houstonic Waterworks in their September letter, they indicated they are amenable to discussions about a sale at an agreed upon price. Obviously, the sale requires a seller and an agreement on price. To move this process forward and determine that price, the town hired a qualified, in my opinion, independent appraisal firm. And as Mark indicated yesterday, we're hopeful to get a report from that appraiser sometime in February. The potential sale could be to a private entity, and the most frequently mentioned is Aquarian Water Company, a subsidiary of Eversource, the publicly traded for-profit utility, or it could be sold to some public entity, probably connected in some manner to Great Barrington. And that's where we sort of get closer to our discussion tonight. The sale could be to the Great Barrington Fire District, hypothetically, or a newly created entity controlled by the town, perhaps an entity similar to our wastewater plant, which is referred to as an enterprise fund and is controlled by the town and the select board. The fire district, as we'll talk about tonight, is unique in that it's a completely separately managed entity. It has Great Barrington in its name, but it's sort of its own entity. It's its own sort of mini municipality is the way I would look at it. As I've learned, it was actually created as a management district, which has a specific meaning in Massachusetts law, backed by a special act of the state legislature way back in 1865. Which was quite a while ago. So on that note, that's just sort of rewinding the tape a bit. Before we go to questions, I guess I would like to start, to pick up where that last meeting left off, and that, at that meeting, Buddy, you were asked if the fire district has interest in acquiring Houstonic Waterworks, and your response, if I may quote, was, "We have no interest." And that I'd say that certainly raised some eyebrows and disappointed some and created some more questions. But I think it's safe to say that there was a fair amount of thought and discussion on the part of yourself and your board as to how you sort of got to that opinion. So, before we go into questions, what I'd like you to do, and perhaps with your colleague Will, is to sort of give us a little more of use the time we have tonight to maybe give us a little better idea as to how you reached that conclusion, and and the considerations that went into that.
Certainly. It was, we've discussed it on and off at a couple meetings, and the decision by a unanimous board was no, we aren't interested. The reason why we aren't interested are multifaceted. One is that there is no way for us to finance it without going onto the backs of our taxpayers in the smaller part of the town. And we would borrow the money, we would be liable for the money. We would have to go and raise the rates, apply to the state to raise the rate the same as the Mercers do. And in the end, we get rejected, or they say no, or they don't want the rates. The taxpayers in Great Barrington are still on the hook for the money we borrowed. That's number one. Number two, we don't have an expertise in dealing with that type of lake water, basically. And the other one is we don't have an interest in going there at all. I'll take
Okay,
questions.
and when you talk about the, the potential financial burden on Great Barrington residents, are you referring to the entirety of Great Barrington
Oh,
residents?
no, just
or
the
your
only
customers?
thing we can raise the rates on are the members of the fire district. We're taxing, we can tax them and we set a water rate. And there's no reason for them to be on the hook for what people in Houstonic want.
Okay, so
People in Houstonic should pay for what they want.
okay, so to sort of review that just quickly, you're saying the most likely way, hypothetically, you would pay for the acquisition would be to raise taxes or water rates.
No,
on-
we would borrow the money, and to
Mhm.
pay the bills on the money we borrowed, we would
Right.
have to raise
Okay,
taxes.
but the payback on that loan would come from a tax increase on the fire district customers. Is most
Correct.
likely. Is that correct?
So can I ask for a
Yes,
clarification?
go ahead. Yeah.
So, buddy, help me to understand here. So the fact that you'd have 800 or so more customers paying for water would not help to offset any of those costs of purchasing the water company. Is that correct?
I don't believe it would. No, yes, that's correct.
Because this would be an upfront cost versus a cost for service? Is that the general issue?
You have to go to the state to get a rate increase. You have to justify that rate increase. And Great Barrington borrowing the money to put water in Housatonic, I don't think would pass muster with the state. And if it did, we're still not interested.
And I guess I still struggle with, so you're not a for-profit company.
No, we are.
You're not a nonprofit company.
Well, actually, different than the select board, we aren't even paid.
You're referring to the board. Yeah.
Oh, the members of the board,
Yes.
right, but the people who work for,
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, they're paid.
okay. So, and I'm still, so you're a district, which means you are a sort of public entity, but you're not, you're overseen by the state, just like any water agency.
Department of Revenue, yes, the DPW, I mean, the different state organizations that
And are there
we deal with.
Are there other towns in Massachusetts that have a similar setup?
Oh, yeah, Williamstown does, Dalton does.
And is it the entirety of the town that's served by the district, or just a part of the town the way it is in Great Barrington?
In Adams, just those areas that are in the district pay. The problem is how do we expand the district to include Housatonic? We have to expand in a method where everybody joins one after another. We have one person that chooses not to join, we're done.
What is that? Elaborate on that, buddy. What do you
Yeah,
mean?
I'm sorry, I'm trying to.
Yeah.
Okay, if we wanted to go to, we'll just say we wanted to make our district conjoin with the Housatonic district, we would have to have every property owner on that water line that we extend decide to join the district. If we went two ways, we'd have to everybody on that side join. because that's the only way we can tax them. They have to be part of the district.
And so if they say they don't want to be, then you can't just disconnect them from the water source, no?
No. Disconnect it. It wouldn't be a continuous district. It'd be a district with spaces in it. That's right. We don't want.
there's no, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I have a
There's no-
question.
There's no provision for some type of majority approval on that. You're saying it's every customer has to approve,
As we go down the line, yes.
but if they didn't approve,
We'll stop right there.
well, you would stop it, but just if we spoke to the state about this, would they say that you could proceed, you just can't add that particular customer to the fire district, or or would they say you have to stop the whole
I've
thing?
never looked into it,
Right.
and I
That's
I
fair.
don't intend to.
Go ahead, Elaine. Yeah.
Yeah, but I have a question. I'm kind of, very interested by the whole legal entity that you guys represent. I'm still not entirely clear on it, but one question I have is, but if you were to borrow the money, okay, would you be borrowing as municipality? Would you be borrowing at the rates that the town would borrow? At what rate would you, as your entity, be borrowing?
The same
I
as
don't
the
know if you
town.
guys look into it, yeah.
We would borrow the same as the town.
As the
fire
town,
district and the town of Great Barrington share the same rating of the state.
Okay,
Business
all right.
rating for
Okay,
both
thank you.
double A.
And just to be clear, this has come up at the meetings of the board for the district, and the board's feeling is that this is not something they want to look into.
Go ahead, Will.
If I may, I've had the Prudential Committee has discussed this at length on several meetings. And I keep asking the question that I can't understand why changing management is going to improve the water quality. I don't see how that is tied one to another, that if somebody else owns it, the water is going to get better. The waterworks in Housatonic has infrastructure problems, and I believe 3 years ago, Great Barrington went out for a study and found that it was going to be quite a bit of money to fix all that. And that doesn't happen overnight. That's a 20-year plan, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, buddy. And it was somewhere around $30 million. Just because somebody else is going to be running it isn't going to solve all the problems immediately. And then, as the chairman said, if we go across and somebody doesn't want to join into the district, then the next abutting property is going to have a hard time to join the district and get that going. So that opens up a whole other can of worms. That how does that property that doesn't want to be in the fire district get water supplied to their house?
And can I just ask, so this is an issue that's sort of unique to the charter for the district. So if a private company came in and took it over, people could join or not, could be customers or not. Or if the town took it over as an enterprise or some sort of public entity run by the town, not as a separate district, then people could opt in or out? Or is this unique to, it sounds like this is something that's very unique to the district.
I would say yes, and if it's no different than the sewer system. If you were on the sewer system and you decided you didn't want to pay the town of Great Barrington, is the Board of Health going to allow you to put in a septic system and stop paying? The answer to that, Mark, is no, right? So now we're in, so if you have somebody in the Housatonic and the town creates its own water district or creates a fund very similar to the sewer fund where it's the users pay, then you're going to have to bill them according to the amount of water that they're using, like the same as the way the sewer works. Our advantage is the way we are, we can both charge for water and tax, which gives us a better rating when we go to borrow money, which the town has the ability to do and has the ability to collect it through a user fee. If we use that method, we would have no way to, we would have to deal with the state every time we wanted to get a rate increase, where if you were on the sewer or a water thing, you would not have to go through that. You would set the rate. That's why it's a better proposition to make sure you get what you want by having the town take over the Mercer company and have yourself as the people that are going to bill according to the rate that people are using the thing, same as the sewer system. Our method is just too most likely problematic to continue.
Well, I think this is helpful to sort of understand the distinction. I guess what's unique about the district is that it has its own ability to tax individuals.
That's
without
correct.
any outside approval.
That's when you compare, our rates to what you pay in the Houstonic water. Most people of modest means are in the same, pay basically the same amount of money.
Okay, that's a separate issue, but I just think
Yeah.
if we talk about the, what is unique about this district and what is good about it and what is bad about it, et cetera. What's unique about it is that it's its own taxing entity.
Yes,
And that triggers the need for this approval of every member that you're adding to the district. And that's, I think, adding to the complexity of the process. Will and Buddy, again, I appreciate you sort of going through your rationale here, but there was a third rationale, which was sort of kind of a little bit opaque about how you just didn't want to do it. What I think you're saying is that, and I'm going to speculate, is that, there's just too much uncertainty in this process and that you just don't, it's just not something you want to undertake because of that, but maybe that's wrong. Can you just elaborate on, we could wait for Buddy. Get
it's
off.
a Zoom meeting, Ken. You have to be online.
Okay.
Well, one of our other members wanted to come to the meeting. He thought it was at the town hall, Kenny Schumacher.
Okay.
Um,
I did just want to I know there's a hand up in the audience, but I just want to make sure that the members of the committee have a chance to ask their
right,
questions.
so Buddy, while you're on the phone, you alluded to a third reason why you didn't want to do this, which was sort of a little bit opaque and you didn't describe it. I guess to me, it sounds like that's sort of a catch-all for the various uncertainties that you've alluded to here and that Will has mentioned. But can you elaborate a bit on that as well?
Well, to be absolutely brutal about it,
Yeah.
the way the people in the Housatonic are after the Mercers, I just don't want to be in that position because I don't think we can make it happen fast enough if we did it.
No, that's fair. I understand your point that there is, that there's a lot of the issues relating to the water, there are no magic fixes. But what I would say, the flip side of that, based on what I've heard and read, is that, certainly when you've made comments about how the source of the water between Houstonic Water and the fire district is relatively similar, I think the response is that, well, you guys, which is a compliment, are somehow able to make that water potable and transparent, whereas Housatonic has been unable to do that.
Oh, okay, I understand where we're going. Yes, I did talk about that. What it is that as far as the state, in dealing with the state and with water quality, we're both classified as surface water. It's because we draw our water from Green River through a gallery system, and the Houstonic Water Company draws its water off the pond through a filter system. We're both classified the same. We both have to treat the water the same. That's where I'm coming from, is that we're both classified by the state as the same type of water. We are not a well. We're in the process of looking at wells, and we have another project we're going to work on this, most likely, hopefully this summer, where we're going to test for some more wells in another part of town within our district or on the edge of our district to see if we can find some water to supplement what we have from Green River.
But I have a little bit more technical question, this is actually a good way to segue here. So is the issue, and I hear there is a definitely infrastructure issue with the Housatonic Waterworks, but is there also an issue related to the source? And now, from what you just mentioned is the sources are in the same category, but they are just different kind of sources and are just being handled differently in terms of the actual technology, how the water gets filtered or cleaned up. But is there an underlying issue, the source that the Housatonic is using? And I know it's not always easy, to find local sources that are reliable and all that, or would that be like a major thing if they were able to change that, or is it just in theory? I know there is a lot of work to go with it, or is it really that the infrastructure is so obsolete that it just cannot handle the volume or the current quality of the water?
I'm not sure about our infrastructure. I have a pretty good handle of what it's like. I'm not sure what their infrastructure is. Our water quality is most likely very similar when it starts before it gets to the filter system, and after the filter system, it's most likely pretty much the same. It's when it gets into the pipes, it may be different.
Oh, I see. So you would say that in terms of the actual source, there's not a huge difference between where you source and where they source.
Well, with an open water source, the state says you have more problems with one that's closed, but we're both classified the same. And
Right.
if something happened to Green River, we could be in a lot more problems than if something happened to Mercer's Pond up there. Long time.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Madonna.
Madonna.
You're on mute.
On.
Donna, you're on mute.
Okay, all right,
Go
you
ahead.
can hear me now. So, Buddy, I've lived here for quite a long time, and I mean, as I recall, way back when, maybe every now and then, there's been a little blip in contaminants to the Green River water. And can you speak to that as well?
Oh, yeah. Well, what happens is that I think about 4 times in the last about at least 3 or 4 times in the last 5 years, we had to tell everybody in our district that we had a contamination problem. What happens is that once you have a problem, one of your tests comes through and it says that there's a problem with the test, we immediately go out and retest. There's been a number of minor problems, and of the times we have, most of them have been the vessels that we put the water in to get tested was the problem, but we still have to report it to the state. We still have to go through it. And one of the things about the improvements we're looking to do to our district will take all that stuff away because of the reporting system that we have and the way we have to do the testing for the state and the number of times we have testing. When we have a problem, usually when we retest, the problem is gone, but we have a 24-hour period where we have to tell the community what happened and make some advisories, but we usually go out and retest within hours. And by the time that test comes through, which is 24 hours later, we've been clear.
So it's still very similar. I mean, both water companies have to, it's not 100%, obviously.
Oh, yeah, no, it could be a lot of, well, get a
Right.
little water time and get heat.
Right.
We all have to put a certain amount of material into the water that we're doing, and we're looking for a way to kind of reduce the amount of chlorine we put in it. So
Right.
we had a different system, but no matter what we have, everybody has to have chlorine in the system, because as you get further away from the source, the more pipes you have, there has to be some type of chlorine testable in there to keep the water fit to drink.
Okay, thank you.
So, Buddy, and I guess I just want to be clear. So what I hear you saying is that the issue with the Housatonic water is most likely in the filters and or the pipes. And
I would most likely assume some pipes have to be replaced, or, I mean, the system is, we have the problem in our system, it's old, and the other problem is that, in fact, I just had it at my house here 3 weeks ago, the pipes go,
Right. Well, my house has old pipes too, but the issue we're talking about are the pipes in the main system for the
Yes.
entire. But your feeling is that the situation with the pipes is just more than a district like yourself could take on.
we don't have the personnel.
Personnel, okay. And Will, you wanted to respond to that?
Yeah, just to add on, because we replace a water main out in the street, it doesn't necessarily replace your service line from that main into your house. And the problem that we have in the fire district, and I'm sure with Housatonic Water and everybody else in the Northeast, those pipes are over 100 years old, and they deteriorate as they age. They get more contamination in them from rust and sediment and everything else that's in there, especially if it's not moving a lot. And you have to look at service lines. There's a mandate out now for the next 2 years, actually it's another year and a half, I believe, for the service line survey that DEP is requiring, that we have to go out and look at everybody's service line to make sure that they're up to snuff and not in a damaged condition. And that's another thing to add into the infrastructure and the fees and taxing or whatever to raise money for this, that every time you turn around, DEP is coming out with another regulation that requires more testing or more inventory or something else. And it just gets more expensive every year to keep doing this. But to provide safe water, we have to do that. And it's not something that we go out once in a while and test. As Buddy was alluding to, these tests are every day, and then there's monthly tests, and a couple times a month there's different tests for all sorts of different chemicals that can or might show up, that we have to go through all these sampling, and it's not just one place, it's several places throughout the system that need to have the samples drawn and tested. So it's quite a lot of work, and it goes back to that we've got old infrastructure that needs to be looked at, and that unfortunately is very expensive. And this year it's even tougher for construction because we can't find the pipes that we need to put in to upgrade some of these things. So the supply system is throwing another wrench at us with that.
Well, my,
And Will, I'm sorry, could you speak to the staffing that you do have? Just for those who may not know, like how big is the
Staffing, we have 4 paid staff.
Okay.
Our clerk that runs the place and keeps the keeps the lights on, does all the billing, all the reporting and all of that. We have a water superintendent who is licensed, twice licensed by the state as a distribution license and a treatment license. And the other 2 operators that we have to assist the superintendent are also licensed. So we have a well-rounded crew. They've been with us for a long time, and I can't say enough about them. They're very good at their jobs, and I commend them for getting their licenses and stepping up. That we never go a day without a certified operator. So
the 2 operators, are they full-time employees or?
yeah, all 3. The superintendent's and the primary operator, and then they have 2 that are also licensed.
Okay, so what you're, based on your earlier comment, all 4 of these people are fully engaged in their current responsibilities. So adding another system to it, I guess that's where your concerns come from, the staffing side.
Yeah, that would be definitely more staff to oversee the infrastructure and the pumping facility and all the rest of that causes more monies to be spent there as well.
So, as we go forward in this process and evaluate pros and cons of the town's alternatives, creating a new entity under the authority of the select board, similar to the wastewater treatment plant, or called an enterprise fund, that certainly is an option in terms of the sort of the legal entity and the structure of the acquisition. But I think it sounds like a key issue for the town, which has probably already been part of its thinking to date is that we don't have any people around to run that operation if we were to buy Houstonic Water Works. So we would have to hire people to do that. And obviously in this environment, that's much easier said than done. In contrast, hypothetically, if Aquarian would be interested in buying the company, the advantage that has is they have people who presumably could be allocated to this new acquisition. So I just wanted to walk through that a bit. I'm sorry, Anne, you had a question?
I just wanted to again follow up and trying to understand a district versus an enterprise fund versus a privately owned company. And you may not be able to answer this, but is your relationship with the state any different because you're a district versus a public enterprise fund or private company, or is it all water companies have the same relationship with the state?
We all have different relationships depending on the structure of the organization. The town has a different structure with the state than the private water company would, or the fire district, we're the same way. With the ability to tax, we aren't going to the state for rate increases.
You aren't, or you are? I'm sorry.
We are not. We do not go to the state for rate increases.
Even for the usage fee part of your
That's
revenue?
correct.
But I
The
thought.
same as the
but you
town
would
does
have-
not, the same as the town does not go to the state to increase the sewer rate.
Right, but you would have to go to the state if you wanted to extend your district and override this single person saying no stops you in your tracks. That you have to go
We would go to the state the same as the Houstonic Water Company does if we took over the Houstonic Water Company.
because it's not part of the district.
That's correct.
I think I'm beginning to understand.
Well, I think you're saying that would be the initial case, but if all the customers consented to join the district, then they would all be part of the district. Isn't that right?
Well, you have people who live in 2 other towns too.
That's true. Okay, that makes.
And that's the other complication, right? Yeah. Okay.
Okay, any other questions on this topic? Buddy, I wonder if we could cover briefly another.
Bill,
interesting
do you
topic.
want to open it up to the audience and then come back to your question? Do you want to continue on?
Well, I'm staying on the
Okay.
broad topic, so I think we could just.
Okay,
keep going.
okay. I do want people who are in the audience to know, I see that their hands are up and I'm just waiting, so.
Right. Another topic from prior conversations is the topic of connection to Houstonic Water Works. And big picture, my understanding is that topic is really driven by the state regulators who have told both the district as well as Houstonic Water Works that from an emergency protocol point of view, it would be good if you had the ability to connect to each other's systems in the event of some catastrophic emergency and inability to provide water. And this hasn't happened. It could happen, but it's not something that would enhance either side's ability to provide cleaner, more reliable water on a normal basis. So that's my understanding. Did I get that right?
That's right. All we would be doing is supplying water to each other if either one of us had a problem. But as a matter of fact, we are looking into working on the connection now. We are talking to a separate entity about buying a piece of property in our district where we could put the small station we would need to make the project move forward.
But so it's not the case where if you just connected the two. Well, let me rephrase that. Some might be of the belief that if you connected the two, then the next day, all right, you could basically disconnect from Long Pond and disconnect from the manganese issues, and that the Houstonic Water Works customers might benefit from the cleaner fire district water. So where does that go wrong? What is wrong with that?
That
view?
goes back to the 100-year-old service lines that need to be replaced because they're old and full of sediment, and that's the nature of the beast, unfortunately. There's lines that need to be replaced and upgraded, and just hooking up a new hose to your system isn't going to change things. It might change the manganese, but I believe now, I haven't chatted with Housatonic Waterworks, but I believe the manganese issue is a warm summertime event that's not year round.
Although my understanding of the manganese problem is that it is driven by the source of the water, and that is, it really emanates from the long pond water, perhaps that it's surface water as opposed to deeper water, and that it's not driven by sediment in the pipes. So if you under that view, then connecting the systems might improve the manganese issue.
But as I said, I believe that's just a summertime issue. That's not a year-round issue.
It may, do it for a month or two, but if they have a system that's taking the manganese out, no change at all.
Right.
Right. Well, okay, so that being said, and I guess I'm trying to clarify this sort of somewhat confusing topic, but I think what you're really saying, first of all, what you're saying is that connecting the systems is perhaps not as simple as it sounds, and really would not represent a solution to the Housatonic Waterworks customers. It's really just an emergency system that's sort of an elaborate extension cord hose to connect the two systems in the event of a catastrophe.
Correct.
That's right.
Again, I think some people will still have questions about that, but I guess perhaps we understand that a little bit better. And how long has this topic of a connection been sort of discussed?
Most likely we've on and off 2 or 3 years. We've ordered the pipe now. We're looking at trying to purchase a piece of property to be able to set up a system, because we have to reduce the pressure in our system to go to Housatonic. And there's a couple other issues, because the state would require us to do. If we took water from them or they took water from us, it may have to be treated in the same system that each one of us is using. There's a number of small problems, but it's one of these things that the basic thing is hooking the pipes together and reducing the pressure.
Can I just follow up on the pipes issue? So you've mentioned that the pipes in Housatonic are quite old and needing upgrade, and that you face the same issues in the Great Barrington Fire District, and we know that these are issues throughout the state of Massachusetts. Do you have, or have you had a schedule for pipe upgrades or maintenance? And is that public?
We kind of, because of the age of our system, is whenever the town is going to do a street, we have worked with whoever the DPW head of the town is, and if they're going to repave a street or reclaim a street, we try to get into that street before they do, so we can correct the pipe that we have in there if it's any age, so that we won't have problems after the town fixes it. We're digging it up to correct something. We're trying to work together so that we don't have an extra expense for either one of us. So as the town has changed, has reclaimed streets or done things with streets, we tried to replace the pipe in it. At the present time, we ordered pipe to put in 4,400 feet to go from the pumping station to the road. We ordered the pipe 2 months ago. It's a 42-week delivery time. The price of the pump has gone from $240,000 to $560,000.
But can I just ask, so I think it makes absolute sense that when the town is digging up the road anyway, it's a great time to put new pipes in. Is that the same practice been done in Housatonic? Do you know, or Mark, do you know?
I have no idea.
You know, from what
I-
I've read in the reports, it hasn't been done, in terms of.
I don't believe so, no.
Phil, can I ask Buddy a question?
Please go ahead.
How old is the fire district? I mean, we keep talking about old pipes, replacing old pipes versus the Housatonic water pipes. I mean, how old are your pipes, or when did they start going? And I mean,
we have-
I'm trying to get an idea of.
Okay, we have 44 miles of pipes. We've replaced, most likely we have 20 some odd miles of pipe that have, maybe 27 miles of pipe that most likely has been replaced since 1960. The pipe that we're replacing was put in I just talked about, was installed when they opened the water system in 1933.
Oh,
If you've
okay.
seen us working on South Main Street from the police station down to Silver Street, we just replaced an 1893 pipe there. There was a 6-inch pipe on the left-hand side on the east side of the road going down. We already have a pipe on the west side of the road, which is larger, that was installed in 1970 or so. And the reason why we had because the highway down there in South Main Street, and the town is looking at repaving it, that it's all concrete. When the former chairman, Chief Kavanaugh, had that pipe put in on the west side of the street, he would have had to go across the street at every house to put in to redo the service main, and every service main would have created a ditch into the cement. So they left the pipes on both sides of the road. We just got around to replacing the pipe on the left side of the road because it's going to be repaved, and there's most likely, we've tried to fill it so that it won't make the road uneven because they were going to process it, and so we just changed that pipe. We ordered that pipe in April of last year, and the pipe was delivered to us in October when we put it in.
Okay, thank you.
Buddy, a follow-up to that, maybe an ignorant question, but do you have, when in the maps of your system, do you have full knowledge of the age of all the pipes in the system?
I don't, but I'm very certain that our foreman and the employees have a very good idea of an estimated age of the pipes. Because years ago, galvanized pipe was a problem that's all been removed in town. We put in transite pipe, which may down the road have some problems. And all we're using now is ductile iron. This is something that Chief Kavanaugh decided that was the best thing to do in the long run. And based on the years of his experience as both a fire chief and a plumber, he was right.
But so you have an idea of the age, but you also, do you have an idea of which pipes are good and which pipes are really in need of
Well, actually, every time we dig some pipe up and we take a look at it, it could be, we did some on River Street, and some of that was put in, I think, in the 50s, and there was a problem with some of that. So it's hard to say.
Right. I mean, I asked that because in all of the consulting reports that have been put together on Housatonic Water Works, anyone feel free to correct me if I get it wrong. I think there's a discussion, broadly speaking, well, we may need to replace the whole system for $50 million or whatever the number is, or we don't. And because I don't think I think there's essentially, there's a big, we don't know in that, and we'll only find out when we dig up these pipes to see if they're working or not. So there's sort of a big mystery because the pipes are underground, obviously. And so the consultants say in a very sophisticated, elaborate way, the system may be okay, or you may need to replace everything or anywhere in between. Now,
The last gentleman that did the study for the town of Great Barrington never, ever talked to us, never came in our office, never talked to anybody in the fire district. He went and used state reports. So I have no idea.
okay, well, I'm not trying to disparage any of their
No,
consultants.
I'm just telling you that I
It's
read
just
a
the reality
report
that they're
about,
underground, yeah.
I read a
yeah.
report about our district and with a person that never even walked into our office.
Okay, I hear it, but the reality is they are underground, and there's a big, we
Yeah.
don't know. relating to
Yeah.
that.
Buddy, how much does it cost to replace? I'm writing down my little questions here. Just to replace average pipe. I mean, do you have a cost figure on that?
Go ahead, Will, give her an example.
Yeah, we're doing some pricing on another, I work for another water company in the area, and we just priced out a water main. 8-inch ductile iron is $160 a foot.
Ooh. Okay. And how, what do you do about, like pipes that have, I don't know, I would say non-metered leaks, or, I mean, do you account for that as well? I mean, how do you know where there like are seeping leaks or
Usually,
things?
Buddy can really speak to this because he's
Well,
personally
I
familiar
was
with it.
walking to my mailbox and I saw a 6-inch sprinkler in the middle of my yard where I never installed one, so it just kind of appears. Yeah.
They're very insidious. The older pipes were put together with just a nut and bolt kind of connection. And over the years, you get a little bit of a leak between two of the bolts or wherever they come together, and it starts a little drip, and then it gets a little bigger because of the pressure. And we've seen a 4-inch main in another town in the area that was leaking over 100,000 gallons a day through that little slice in that leak. And it took about a month to find it because it was so deep under the road, and it was in a spot that was all rocky and ran right out into the a brook that was beside it that you couldn't tell if it was water or water in the brook or wherever. And because it was down so far and into the rocks, it was not testing for any chlorine residual. So the leaks are very insidious. It's tough to find, and usually they're bubbling up through the ground. That's how we
Yeah,
find it.
well, we had some at the Housing Authority down on Main Street, and it seemed like all of a sudden things were just, the pressure valves were just, all of a sudden the pressure built up, and all of a sudden there was all these, buildings that were having some water leakage. I guess we had to get the fire district down there to, help us, stop or at least find where the leaks were.
Okay, I have one last question, and then we can go to questions from our audience, if there are any. Buddy and Will, we've heard unfortunate tales of customers being, Houstonic Waterworks customers being dissatisfied with the quality of the meter readings, which is calculated usage of the water in their home. Can you speak to your experience in terms of, have you had customers complaining about defective meters in their homes?
We've had people regularly tell us that they think the meter readings are wrong, and once we explain to them, we sell by 100 cubic feet, not by gallons, and we explain how to get the gallons. Most of that goes away. We change our meters regularly if there's a problem. As a matter of fact, meters we have in now, I believe, are 10 or 12 years old, and the most likely good for 20 years. We're going to be getting ready to look at a different type of meter to change it. I'm quite sure that more of the better systems that they have are pretty good, but everything in mechanical can fail. So if they have a problem, usually we'll send people over and look at it and examine it and change it if that's a problem. But usually when we get through changing it, what happens is that the cost, what they're paying is usually very accurate, and it could usually be a problem someplace else inside, downstream of the meter.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the board? If not, Anne, are there any questions in our audience?
Yeah, so I just want to let everyone know, so there's 15 guests and one select board member who's also in attendance. But I guess Eileen, you had your hand up a while ago. You've taken it down. But I do want to, since you had your hand up first, I want to give you the first opportunity to speak if you'd like. So just raise your hand again if you'd like. And hand is raised, so I will allow you to talk. Go ahead.
I did not realize my hand was up.
Oh, okay. I appreciate it. Okay, thank you. All right. I'm going to, Sharon Gregory has her hand up. So Sharon, go ahead.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, Sharon Gregory, Hollenbeck Avenue. I have two questions. One has to do with the difference in the water intake between two systems. The second has to do with the distribution system. First on the intake, I've read the reports several times now, and I understand the Housatonic water intake consists of two pipes, one at 4 feet depth and the other at 8 feet. One of the consultants at ECOM suggested the 4 feet be discontinued. Nevertheless, I was wondering, what is the difference between the GBFD's intake versus Housatonic's? Because it seems like such shallow intake, 4 feet and 8 feet, puts it, even though the source of the water eventually, goes into the aquifer and so forth, the sourcing being so shallow puts it in jeopardy of having more highly soluble manganese. Is that the case for GBFD as well?
Ours, we use a gallery system. The water moves by like osmosis from the underneath the Green River through most likely 75, 100 feet of gravel into our systems, and we pump it out of our systems, and then we treat it and put it into the system. We draw it out of the system, treat it as it goes into the system. Our system is about 14 feet underground. The gallery system is 220 feet long, 8 or 10 feet wide, 8 feet deep, and it's usually filled to capacity no matter how dry the water is. So it's two different systems. I would assume how we get our water and how they get theirs. So I have no idea, 4 feet, 8 feet, whatever they're talking about. I have no expertise in that area.
Yeah, well, thank you. I've really read the reports several times, so that has concerned me, and seems to be very different. The second question, I guess, is a little bit related to Mr. Brinker's statement that Housatonic Water's problem is a $30 million thereabouts a problem, and we can't handle that. But when I read the DBC engineering report, they say that GBFD's pipe problem is about $54 million, just the pipe problem. And I know, everything is not exact because you got to open the pipes up and see what the conditions are. But from an order of magnitude, it's more than $22 million for HWW versus $54 million for GBFD. $22 million is big, but it's less than half of GBFD. And we don't say, well, 54 million, it's too big. We should just, we can't afford it. We handle it, is what I'm trying to say. And it seems that with a better financing of Housatonic water pipes with $22 million and a filtration system, it needs to be addressed. And one of the things that I guess the three authors of the letter sent to the finance committee is, what does that look like financially? So I'll give it back to you, Phil. Thank you.
Thanks, Sharon.
I guess one comment I'd make is, that report that I guess I read a few months ago. I hadn't seen it before then. It's certainly helpful, but it was really a bit of a high level review of the fire district, and it really just said, this is our estimate of the cost of the entire pipe system for Housatonic Water Works. I'm sorry, for the fire district. And if you were to need to replace it, it would cost, we believe it would cost about $50 million in its entirety. It really did not address the issue that we touched upon a little bit earlier about, well, how old are all the pipes? what's the good stuff, what's the bad stuff, and what needs to be replaced now versus in 5 years versus 10 years versus 15 and 20. So, it's useful. All information is useful. I'm just not sure how useful it is to talk about the need to replace a $50 million system, because I just don't think that's accurate. The reality is that these systems get replaced over time, over long periods of time, and as Buddy alluded to, practically speaking, you tend to do them, if the pipes are under roads, you tend to tie that to other road work because to reduce the cost. So I understand the question. I just don't, I'm not sure how throwing together hypothetical numbers about how much $50 million would cost addresses the current concerns of the Houstonic Waterworks customers.
Well, it's the same company that estimated $22 million that was needed for the Housatonic system. So I'm just saying, on a relative basis, the GBFD is, users is twice Housatonics. The pipes are twice the amount of Housatonics, and the cost for upgrades will probably be about twice, Housatonics. So I'm just saying, on an order of magnitude, it's a big problem, but we have a bigger problem even in GBFD, and there are things that we have to deal with, whether it's the wastewater system or the water system. And I don't know, I mean, with better financing terms, it seems like we should be able to figure it out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sharon. So Deborah, I'm promoting you at this point, and you should, yep. I'm sorry. So do you, okay, Deborah, so.
Hello, can you hear me? Deborah Herman, 373 North Plain. I just have two things. One is, I have studied the history of the fire district, and I know in the 19th century, the fire district did acquire 2 other water systems in Great Barrington. I have no knowledge of the details, but there are acts of the state legislature that document this fact. If anybody's interested, I have the documents and I'm willing to send them. The second thing is, Buddy seemed to suggest that the citizens of Housatonic have somehow been cantankerous or unfair to the Mercers. And I'd like him to elaborate on that, because I found that an upsetting comment. That's all.
Well, thank you for your comment.
You don't wish to elaborate?
No, I don't.
Okay, thank you. I have no further comment other than to say that the citizens of Housatonic want drinkable, safe water, and I don't find that to be in any way objectionable. Thank you.
Thanks, Deborah.
Is there anyone else, Ann?
No, I don't see any other hands.
Okay. Okay, well, I think we've spent a chunk of time on this. Hopefully we've clarified some issues. I don't think we certainly haven't fixed the problem by any stretch, but hopefully we've clarified a few points. Buddy and Will, obviously, thank you for your time. You did not need to join us tonight, but you did, so I appreciate that. Hopefully there'll be just obviously a continued dialogue on how to address this problem for the town. But thanks for your time tonight.
All right. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
the opportunity.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, we will now move on to our next agenda item. Ann, is Chip Ellitzer out there in the
Just
middle?
trying to give me 1 second to move them, but I can't figure. Hold on. I'm just trying to do a switch on who's our fellow panelists. So.
Okay. All right, so we received a letter from Chip Ellitzer recently regarding his thoughts on the regional school district merger. And the board felt it appropriate to include that in our packet and let Mr. Elitzer speak briefly on the topic. Let me wait for him to join.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
We can hear you, yes. We can
Great.
see you. Okay, thank you, Chip. Just let me continue briefly. We obviously, this is a very important issue facing the whole area as well as the town. We thought it appropriate to have Chip join us tonight to communicate his views. But just broadly speaking, this committee really has not spent much time on this topic recently, or in the last year or two, at least that I've been on it. So we're really not, in my opinion, we're not really at a point where we could have a more comprehensive, fully informed discussion on this topic. In addition, the 8-town district task force really is still in the process of deciding what they would like us to respond to in terms of the proposed way of financing the new school district. So, that's still a moving target. That being said, it's obviously a very important topic facing town. So sort of I would describe this as an initial foray into discussing this topic. And on that point, Chip's letter is in the packet. And Chip, let me turn it over to you to express those views that you have.
Thank you, Phil. Appreciate the committee having me on the agenda. I'm also cognizant of the fact that you've already had a long discussion on the main topic of the evening. So I want to keep my comments very brief and simply say, I agree with Phil. This is, I think, the beginning of a discussion, not trying to force an issue. And we have some time because the 8-town committee has apparently decided that they don't have the time to get a proposed new district operating agreement on the town warrants for the regular town meetings. And from what I read, it looks like it's probably going to be a special town meeting in September or even October. So, which is good because I think there's a lot of discussion and education that needs to go on between now and then. It's probably, I don't think I'm exaggerating to say that from a financial standpoint and from an impact to the taxpayer standpoint, there is simply no other issue close to being as important as this issue of how the regional school district is financed, whether it's our current Berkshire Hills district or the proposed 8-town district, which, by the way, I'm in favor of. I think the merger makes a lot of sense. But financially, we have an opportunity to correct a problem that was embedded in the original creation of our district back in 1965, which is that there are wild disparities in the tax rates paid depending on where you live within the district. If you were to, well, let me just state one point first. Of the amount of local property taxes that are collected by the town of Great Barrington, I just did the calculation for this year. 75%, that is 75 cents of every dollar collected in property taxes in Great Barrington goes directly to the Berkshire Hills Regional School District. In Stockbridge, that percentage is 29%. And not surprisingly, Great Barrington taxpayers pay 3 times the tax rate of Stockbridge taxpayers. We're paying $11.20 in the current fiscal year to support the schools per thousand of assessed valuation. Within the 8-town district, well, Stockbridge is $3.63 and Alford is $1.50. Now, if you were going to be creating a new district from scratch with no history, it would be crazy if someone told you, well, it doesn't matter whether you have kids in the district or not, of course, because that's public education. But if you happen to live in Great Barrington, you'll be paying 3 times more than you would if you happen to live in Stockbridge, even though you're all living in the same school district. What I propose, as you can see from the letter and the links that are embedded in the letter, is not that we reduce our tax rate, but that we put ourselves on a glide path to a single tax rate over what would probably amount to be about 10 years. So essentially, as inflation takes hold, as the school budget increases, those towns that are currently paying more than what would be the single rate, which currently would be in the 8-town district, would be Sheffield, Great Barrington, and West Stockbridge, would not see any increase until the single rate was above that which they were already paying. With a 5% inflation rate, it would take 10 years to have all towns reach a single rate. So that's the glide path. What I'd like to begin doing is to at least start a discussion, and I'm happy to talk longer, but I don't think probably tonight is the time you want to hear me. I'm also prepared to talk, love to have one-on-one discussions with anyone who's interested. But it seems like we can, we know what's coming down. I've had extensive discussions with the leaders of the 8-town committee, and the formula they're going to use is going to be still largely based on enrollment, which is the formula we have now. There will not be any real change in how the towns are assessed. And rather than go through what I think would be a futile exercise to put before the towns a new operating agreement that would maintain the status quo in terms of taxation, it would be better to signal to the committee that if they have any hope of getting this passed in the town of Great Barrington, or frankly Sheffield, they need to have something that works on a glide path towards a single rate. And I would suggest that starts with the Great Barrington Finance Committee making a hopefully unanimous recommendation to the Great Barrington Select Board. I'm not just offering a personal opinion here. I've offered as proof 2 items. One was in 2013, which is the last time we voted on a major renovation of monument. The proposal went down in flames on a 39%, 61% vote. It was almost the opposite in terms of approval in Stockbridge, and it was all due to the differential in tax rates, even though I had not yet done my analysis and there wasn't any quantification of what I just told you. I wasn't even involved in the discussion at that time. And then in 2017, we had a special town meeting, and you can see the warrant, and there's a link there, that was passed unanimously, virtually unanimously. I think it was 1 vote against it, where I had proposed what I'm proposing now, and with recommendation for state legislature action. And those 2 votes, I think, will foreshadow what would happen if the proposal was put forth as it's currently contemplated to, in essence, maintain the differential rates within the district. So I'll shut up now. I'm happy to answer questions. I would love to have a further discussion when there's more time for the committee. But it would have a major impact. Another just quick example would be if we had been on a single rate this fiscal year, and we'd already gotten through that glide path. Our tax rate in Great Barrington would be $4.29 less than it is on a per thousand basis of assessed valuation. So we're talking major dollars here, major impact to our taxpayers. And I think I would suggest that the Finance Committee could be in a position to lead on this one. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have any modest questions for Chip. Let me open the floor. Yes, go ahead, Ann.
Yeah, Chip, thanks so much. I really appreciate your coming and talking to us about this. I do have a couple questions. When you did your calculations, I mean, what I often hear is, well, Great Barrington pays more because it has more students in the school. Is that an oversimplification? Is that a misunderstanding? How would this, so this would be that the other towns would be paying at a higher per student rate, but a same tax rate? Yes, or am I misunderstanding?
No, you're understanding perfectly.
Oh, good, okay.
The question that needs to be asked though as a follow-up is, why should student enrollment count at all? When you're talking about when you're talking about tax policy, it's important to establish the boundaries. For instance, for paying federal income taxes, it doesn't matter where in the United States you live. I would pay the same, I would be subject to the same tax code and the same tax rates for paying my federal obligation, whether I lived in Great Barrington or in Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
If I live in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, I will have the same tax liability to the state of Massachusetts for my state taxes, whether I live in Great Barrington or Oak Bluffs. If I live in Great Barrington, I will have the same tax liability whether I live downtown or I live out in the woods. However, if I live in the Great Barrington Regional, the Berkshire Hills Regional School District, it makes a difference where in the district I live, and for no good reason. Because the fallacy that anybody who argues that, well, it's only fair, Great Barrington has so many more students than Stockbridge, for instance, so they should pay more. The problem with that is the towns don't pay the taxes. The towns are just collectors of taxes. The taxpayers pay the taxes. And the hallmark, the underlying financial bedrock of K through 12 public education is everyone pays according to their ability. And since ability is basically judged by assessed property value, because that's how throughout the country most public education is financed through property taxes. And it doesn't matter whether you have 10 kids in the school or you have no kids in the school, you will pay according to your property value, your assessed property value. Why why it matters whether I live in Great Barrington or Stockbridge or Alford shouldn't matter at all. And in fact, 84% of the taxpayers of the registered voters in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts pay a single tax rate within the school district in which they live.
What percentage was that, Chip? I'm sorry, I just wanted to.
Yeah, sorry.
What
What's the
percentage
question?
pays? You threw out a percentage that I thought was really interesting. What percentage pays on a per district rate?
Every 84% of all registered voters in the Commonwealth pay the same rate as their neighbor in the school district in which they reside.
Even if
why is that? Why is that? Because most districts in this, most of the population in the state are not regional school districts. They have a single taxing authority. So for instance, Boston, which is the largest public school system in the state, only has a single taxing authority. It's the city of Boston.
Right.
There's no competing towns. You wouldn't expect folks who live on Beacon Hill, upscale neighborhood of Boston, to say, well, hardly any of our kids go to Boston public schools. We have maybe, 3% of all the students in Boston public schools come from our neighborhood. Why should we pay more than 3% of the budget for the Boston school system? I mean, if you made that argument in Boston, you get laughed out of town. So why should that argument work within a regional school district? The reason is historic. And that you can understand why it happened originally. Great Barrington, the Berkshire Hills District was founded in 1965, basically in order to build Monument Mountain High School. And at the time when the three towns came together, it made a certain amount of sense because up until that point, each of the towns had its own school. And so they created the new district, they contracted out the education of their young citizens to the new district. So each of the towns gave up their direct authority in the education process. And you can understand it initially why it might have made sense to say, well, Great Barrington's got, 3 times as many kids as Stockbridge, therefore they'll be paying 3 times as much as Stockbridge for the district. But that was 58 years ago. And what the 8-town committee is doing is not taking advantage of a clean sheet of paper. They're not saying, in effect, yeah, we're merging the districts, but in effect, we're creating a new district. Let's do it right this time in terms of financing, rather than say, for the next 50 years, you don't have a prayer of doing anything other than what we've been doing, which is to still tax people based on the head count of the enrollment of the towns, whereas the towns, in the case of a regional school district, should be irrelevant. They are the tax collector, they're not the taxpayer.
Chip,
I have a question.
I just want, oh, I'm sorry, Melina, you go.
Okay, and thank you for, this pretty extensive research you have done on the topic, and a lot of really great information. But I'm just kind of curious, are you aware of any other case of a regional district, multi-town district somewhere in Massachusetts that actually did adopt this kind of an approach?
Yes, we did, but only for capital expenditures.
Right. No, I mean for the operating budget. I mean, are you aware of any other?
No. Not only am I not aware, I can tell you that no other district does it the way I'm suggesting.
Okay.
I've done my analysis, and I've done it over multiple years, and I've done it for all 58 academic regional school districts in the Commonwealth.
Mm-hmm.
I can share the big spreadsheet if anybody's interested in really getting dirty with the numbers. I can help you. But no, they haven't, and that's why the special town meeting in 2017, where you see that Article 2 on the warrant, that's part of what's attached to the letter, or there's a live link to it. That was the one that was passed virtually unanimously, and that basically in effect acknowledged that there was really no chance of getting Stockbridge to go along.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way to do it was to have an act of the legislature, because towns and cities are 351 towns and cities in the Commonwealth, and each one is a creature of the state, as they say. So the state can override the operating agreements. They could by a legislative act create a situation where the default setting for financing for allocating the budget within towns in this regional school district is what I propose, rather than what is currently the case. However, there is a provision in the current regs and law that as long as you have unanimity of the towns within a district, they can allocate the budget any way they want to. So what I proposed, and in fact, what was adopted 2 years ago through the work of the Regional Agreement Amendment Committee, which I was on, does just that for capital expenditures. But capital expenditures, because it's stretched over 20-year financing, represents maybe 4 or 5, at the most 5% of the annual budget.
Yeah, sure.
So that's the problem, and that's the issue. I've made a direct political argument with the 8-town committee. I've said, look, you think you've got a chance of getting this past Sheffield and Great Barrington, and we're going to basically just swallow hard and continue to do what we've been doing for the last 58 years. And I don't think so, given what the evidence I've already presented. I said, doesn't it make a lot more sense to get at least the 3 towns who will benefit from my proposal, which are Sheffield, Great Barrington, and West Stockbridge, get their town meetings to approve it. By doing so, you will already have 74% of the money, because those 3 towns provide 74% of the current operating budget of the school, of the 8 towns for school. You will have only 49% of the tax base, because that's the the unfair differential. And you will have 63.5% of the registered voters within the 8 towns. So why don't you start with a critical mass and then work? And we've got time. We've got at least maybe it'll take several years, or maybe it'll take between now and the fall when we have the special town meetings to approve a new operating agreement. But we have time to educate the other towns on why. And one of the links in my letter was published in the Berkshire Edge a few years ago, which lays out my absolutely best thorough white paper, if you will, argument for all the reasons, whether it's principle, policy, or politics, why a single rate is the only way to go.
Mhm.
And it's the way that the rest of the country does itself. It's only in New England that you have towns, you have regional school districts where you have this differential. You don't have the differential anywhere else. Most school districts in the other parts of the country actually send out their own tax bills to people who live within the school district. And as I pointed out, even in Massachusetts, 84% of the taxpayers or registered voters, pay the same rate as their neighbor in the school district. So I haven't heard a single, or I've been doing this now for a number of years. I haven't heard a single argument that holds water in terms of why it shouldn't be a single rate. It just hasn't happened. I mean, I'm always willing to admit I could be wrong, that I'm overlooking something logically, but I don't think I am.
Chip? Hi. So is this, so it would be like, if you go over into New York State, they get like 2 tax bills, is that right? One is a school tax bill and the other one is your other tax bill.
Yeah, I went, my public education K through 12 was in the East Greenbush Central School District, which is a regional school district outside of Albany, this side of Albany. My parents got 2 tax bills. They paid the East Greenbush town taxes, and they got a separate bill from the school district. And that's the way it occurs in New York, New Jersey, everywhere else in the country, basically. Why is New England different about that? I suspect it has this to do with the history and the sort of the fierce attachment to the towns, and the fact that we tend to almost attribute human qualities to the towns. But there's that strong sense of identity town-wise. And I'm not suggesting that we send out separate tax bills. We can continue to have a single tax bill. It's just that the apportionment method among the towns, as long as the apportionment method is based on relative assessed valuations among the towns, it mathematically results in a single tax rate.
And ours would go down here in Great Barrington.
Ours wouldn't go down, because what I'm proposing, again, with an eye on the politics, there's absolutely no chance that Stockbridge would vote to raise their taxes in order to lower Great Barrington residents' taxes. So what I proposed is that the people who are paying more than the pro forma single rate. The pro forma single rate, by the way, is for the current fiscal year is $6.91 per thousand. We're paying $11.20 per thousand. Stockbridge, West Stockbridge and Sheffield are also paying more than the single rate. Those towns would continue to pay what they're paying now until such time as the inflation of the budget causes a single rate to go above that rate that they're currently paying. So we wouldn't stop paying that $11.20 until such time as the overall single rate got to $11.21. However, everybody who's paying less than that rate, which are 5 of the 8 towns, those towns and their taxpayers, if there were no inflation at all, if the school budget remained frozen, they would continue to pay what they're paying now. However, with the inevitable increase in budget year to year, that increase would be shared pro rata among those towns that are currently paying less than single rate. And according to my model, it would take 10 years for all 5 of those towns, for inflation to have caused the taxpayers in all 5 of those towns to have risen to the level of paying the single rate. While that was going on, certain towns, including West Stockbridge, which is closer to the single rate than Sheffield and Great Barrington, are slightly above, but not that much above. Within a couple of years, they would begin to participate in the increases because the single rate would have become more than what they are currently paying. But it also makes it much easier, frankly, to, without additional negotiation, to add other towns to the 8-town district. Given the demography of our district, of Southern Berkshire altogether, I think it's probably inevitable that eventually Lee and Lenox will join the 8 towns. They're already, by the way, paying more than the single rate on a pro forma basis. So it wouldn't be hard for them to do so. But because of the demographics, we will be less than viable in terms of our student head count, even with the 8 towns in a few years. So it's really easy if you've got a formula like I've suggested, which is based solely on assessed taxable value, to do this. You can add these other towns, you add their tax base in with ours, and the calculation is really simple. Compare that to the current formula, which, as I stated in a recent Berkshire Eagle article, it's sort of like Druid priests doing these incantations that nobody else understands and then handing down the answers to the masses. The current formula is such a convoluted black box that very few people understand it. I regard myself as fairly sophisticated financially, and I couldn't do the calculation. And that's just nuts, frankly. And you don't have to understand the calculation, because all you have to do is see what comes out the other end, which is what I've already talked to you about, these differential tax rates.
Okay, do we have any more questions for Chip? Anne, you're muted.
Sorry, I have 2 members of the audience who have had their hands raised, so I will promote them in the order that they had their hand up. Michael, I'm promoting you.
Thank you. One point, Chip, that this is an area on which, of course, as you know, we thoroughly agree. I did find when I was looking at this that one other district, I believe, uses something pretty much like you are proposing, and that's Essex. I might be wrong about that, but you want me to check it out?
I could probably call up Essex really quickly on my spreadsheet and let you know. They may be one of those where there's very little difference. There are some districts where there's not much difference because the ratio of students to assessed property value is almost the same.
Yeah.
You know, the
Whatever
differential
reason.
between us and Stockbridge, for instance, occurs because Stockbridge has, relative to Great Barrington, Stockbridge is property rich and kid poor. Great Barrington is property poor and kid rich. Stockbridge has got a lot more second homeowners, more of their students that do live there will go to private school, and that, because of the enrollment-based formula, or largely enrollment-based formula, that's what gives rise to this extreme differential. It's not very progressive, by the way. The current formula we use actually structurally favors towns that, relative to their neighboring towns within the same district, are richer, send more of their kids to private school, and have more second homeowners. it's a very regressive tax situation.
All set, Michael?
That's it. Yeah.
Okay, great. Somebody else did have their hand up earlier, but they've taken it down. Michael, did you mean to put your hand up again? No, okay. And then somebody else had their hand up, but recently took it down. So I just want to give them a chance if they'd like to speak. Sharon?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Well, I agree with Chip. We've been vexed with this high tax Great Barrington, and we'll have more and more children in perhaps not tax-paying circumstances. So it will be even worse. But I have been sitting on almost all of the 8-town consolidation committee meetings, and certainly every single one of the finance committees. I am concerned that we have so many, and in the high school, it's 40% of the students in the last student count that are not in the 3-town district. And they get to pay, they don't even pay, the state transfers over $5,000 to our town, and we go, oh, look it, we're so great. But, you know, it costs us closer to $20,000 to $30,000 per student. And when it's 40% of the student body for your high school, that's not 1 or 2 incremental people. However, I'm also, and for the tuition people, I think the number is somewhere between 8,000 and 10,000. Anyway, it's much under what we should be getting for financing, particularly the high school. That said, our operating costs are, of course, the large numbers. And as we contemplate consolidating the 8 towns, the operating costs will begin to meld so that the 5,000 will be raised. They won't like that. And the finance committee for the 8 towns are beating themselves over the head with trying to figure out how we incrementally increase the districts who are not paying that much and balancing it with so that each year it'll be better and it'll be more acceptable. So it's a very, you know, we need 8 towns to agree and vote for the consolidation. For me, that's step 1. And much of that is because of the educational benefits. 6 to 8 VOTEC programs that we'd get a lot of state funding and so forth. We're just going to continue to lose our young people if we don't enrich our educational programs. So that's my first priority. The fact that, you know, it will begin to be fairer to Great Barrington, who has been holding the whole South County, you know, education costs on its shoulders, is horrible. But we can't turn it around, you know, in one fell swoop. So that's my largest concern. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we want to wrap this up. Unless there's any other questions out there, Ann?
No, but thank you, Chip.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you for giving me a forum. I appreciate it.
All right, again, as advertised, this is just our initial toe into this obviously very important, complicated topic. So we'll be coming back to that. Thanks for the time, Chip. Okay, we'll move on to the next on the agenda is citizen speak time. Obviously, there's been a lot of speaking, but is there anyone else out there who's looking to speak, Ann? You're on mute. If you're shaking your head, no.
No, I'm so sorry. No, there are no hands raised.
Okay, terrific. Okay, media time, anyone? Seeing none. In terms of the next meetings, we're following the schedule. The next meeting will be our first budget meeting, which is on that schedule. That's in the packet. So We'll see you all then. Do we have a move to adjourn?
Madonna moved to adjourn, and I'm happy to second.
Okay, then I think by unanimous consent, we will adjourn our meeting. Thank you and good night. And thank you, Allison.
All right, thanks to all who attended tonight. Thanks.
Good night.
Good night.